Welcome, everybody, to the May 2025 edition of the Jobsync Roundtables. It's going to be a fun one today. We've got a special guest in the house, Mr. Dan Quigg from Public Insight, joined by yours truly, Alex and Leah from Jobsync. See folks starting to pile into the live audience. Let's do the typical webinar game here. Say hi in the chat where you calling in from, and what is your favorite candy? But you can't say Snickers or Skittles. It's got to be. We got to go a little less mainstream here.
I mean, is there anything other than Reese's peanut butter cups is the best one? I mean, I'm sorry.
Reese's are amazing. I'm a Butterfinger guy myself.
First of all, Twix.
Twix are also very good.
Anything in dark chocolate?
Dan, what's your weapon of choice?
I just put it in there.
Ooh,
Charleston Chew. Since I live in Charleston now, so does everybody remember that? It's about this long.
Yeah, I like it.
It's not a good shelf space candy.
I was going to write Toblerone, but I can't spell that, so that was out immediately. I need short words like Rolo, Twix. I can handle a 4-letter candies.
Rachel Tolbarone, thank you for that. But also peanut M&Ms.
That's good.
Peanut M&Ms are pretty much impossible to. It's like pizza. It's like always going to be good. It's sort of ice cream by themselves. They're amazing. Okay.
Does it matter which color?
No.
The pizza, yes. The color of your pizza matters.
I'll go with that. I agree. Blue pizza's off the off the menu.
Chris Russell, welcome. Sour Patch watermelons. That's also Sour Patch Kids or Sour Patch watermelons. Not the.
Is this? Are we collecting this data as a bridge to our conversation about important data? Because I
feel
like this is where we're heading here.
I was just filibustering a little bit to get the room full, but we're gonna kick off now.
For everybody to come in. I will say if you go to Universal, you got to go to Honeydukes and Harry Potter World and get some good Harry Potter candy. Just
I love it.
For the record.
So I will cast Wingardium Webinarosa here and we'll get started. We are going to talk about data, and Dan has brought some really great data points from some of the work that they do at Public Insight that paints a little bit of a picture of what's being observed in the market. And then we're going to kind of, with the panel and anybody in the audience, if you just raise your hand, let me know. I can bring you on stage and we can have a dialogue, ask some questions, debate. Like these are interactive experiences. Okay, so do not hesitate to make it known that you want to join the stage, and I will bring you right up. But before we get started, I want to do a little bit of intros. So why don't we just go around the horn really quick with our panelists. Dan, you're the guest of honor. Why don't you get us started, and then we'll share a little bit more about Jobsync and Public Insight after we get our people intros done.
Sure. Dan Quigg, CEO of Public Insight. It's great to be with you all. And as I was telling them, it's a big time thunder shower going on outside my windows. So if you see me all of a sudden blurt out, it's and then Justin tells me he was 3 blocks from a tornado. So who knows what could happen here. So anyway, nice to see you all.
Thank you. And then Leah.
Hey everybody, I'm Leah. I missed you all last month, so nice to be back. I lead our commercial business here at Jobsync, and as somebody pointed out to me the other day, I have now been in this industry for 25 years on the recruiting talent side, so kind of exciting. But excited to jump into the data here and see what we can tease out of today's conversation. And we've lost Dan already.
And that must
be I'm here. I was just shutting the door. I didn't realize it was open.
Oh, okay. We're like, wow, that was very prescient. And then we have Alex Murphy.
Cyclones abound, right? Tornadoes and hurricanes, oh my.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. My name's Alex. I've been in the space about the same amount of time that Leah has been, although I started a little later than 12, which is when Leah must have, since she's been in it for 25 years. So
No
we've had a lot of fun here at Jobsync. We started in 2019 and started this kind of right as the pandemic began. Try to make sense of all of the crazy and chaotic things that exist in our space. So Dan, thank you for being here to help us get our arms around some data and TA.
Yeah. And then Dan, can everybody see the public insight slide?
Yep.
We should be good. Yeah, cool. Dan, maybe give us a little bit of insight into public insight, what you guys do, and then just next slide me through that, and then we'll get to the first data point kind of after your quick intro here.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, and definitely enjoy this type of forum and format. Just 30 seconds on Public Insight. So we are a market intelligence platform provider. So our job is to curate, enrich, and optimize the use of public data. That's our name, Public Insight. So we are really looking at things that I like to say are hiding in plain sight, or depending on your illustration, turning lemons into lemonade. It's finding the things that are buried. Our data is used in many different ways, but it's primarily about understanding the market from an employer perspective and a career perspective, and there's all sorts of different angles that are used. We do have, by the way, quick commercial, we do have a jobs report that we publish every month. We have about 1,200, it's a free, totally free, about 1,200 subscribers to that. So definitely can, and we also have this free comp widget there at the bottom. I don't know if the slides are being made available, but in any event, that link is at the bottom.
Yeah, I'll share them with the recording.
So great to be here. You go ahead and hit next slide. And so this is kind of the topical panorama of the data that we'll just touch on a couple indicators that come out of this list. We actually have about 250 market indicators that we generate. And they broadly come across these categories. So we'll hit one or two from these as we go along. That was it for me.
Awesome.
Back to you.
Yeah. So Jobsync, we're a hiring operations platform that takes all of your native applications, all of your job distribution, the optimization, distribution, and sponsorship of those jobs, and pulls that all together into one sort of powerful platform where we enable companies to hire more effectively at less frustration, both for the company and the candidates. So that is our intros. Let's get into our first data point here. I'm going to flash this up, compensation landscape. And then we're going to go through a couple quick slides. I'm going to pull this down, and then we'll just have big faces chatting here for just a second. So Dan, walk us through what you've got here, and let's get started.
Yeah, these. So when Justin and Leah asked, say, hey, what's the seven metrics? Of course, my brain could go any million different directions, but broadly, I picked 7 that are fairly obvious, but also interesting from the standpoint that they, pretty much are part of our day-to-day, view. So I started with just compensation. And the way that I've kind of structured these slides is very much a macro level view, and then kind of drilling into things that are more actionable, and then we can just kind of kick it around. So what we're looking at here is the trends in the mid-posted compensation range. This is based on job postings, principally Indeed job postings. And this is through April, just kind of showing where we're at from a growth in mid-posted comp. Basically, everything's leveled off for the last 7, 8 months. But then as we drill the lens, next slide, we start to then break that down by industry sector. And we could see that, for example, a transportation has dipped. That could be cyclical. One of the things that I find interesting about technology and financial services is, they've not only recovered, technology had that real bubble last year, but now has actually kind of thrived. When we get to supply demand, we'll see further evidence of that. So this just takes it another step further of going and looking at these compensation values by sector. And then moving ahead to kind of the next slide is then starting to put that into a form that I might say is a little more actionable. So what if we were to take the compensation range as a percent? And Lee and I had some interesting dialogue about this yesterday, is if we take not only the compensation, which is in the y-axis, but also take the range percent, and we look at that over time, we'll see that the actual compensation ranges have tripped up a little bit. When we first saw pay transparency really kicking into high gear, that number was somewhere between 18 and 22, 23%. In fact, Indeed automatically imputed it at 23%. Now we're seeing it's more in that 24, 25%. And here, looking at nurses, we could see that the range midpoint is 24.2. That's that red line. The blue line is 95, 891. So you can easily see which job titles are paying more. You could do this by employer as well, but also which ones have a higher band range, which is kind of an interesting metric. So we threw that out as kind of person. Yep.
I'm sorry. Can you, just to make sure everybody understands, can you explain a little bit, like maybe Twitter tweet style, what is the mid-market comp range? Like, what is that band? And then what is that percentage dispersion value? Can you kind of dive in a little bit more what those mean?
Yeah. So when on any job post, you have a range, right? X to Y. So what we do is we take that X, the minimum, and we take the maximum, and we split the baby. So we take the midpoint, that's the midpoint. We then also look at the range, so the max minus the min, and then the max minus the min is a range. We then take that range and divide it by the midpoint. So that gives you an indicator of kind of the band of the range. So if you have a highly paid position, but if I just use the range without the percentage, it's going to have a meaningless number. Whereas if I use the range as a percent of the mid, it's going to give me, a value that I can use across job titles, across functions. And so that's what we're looking at there. Hopefully that's a Twitterized version of that. It's more than 250 characters, but we don't have that restriction anymore.
They lost all the rules on Twitter anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday about two things as regarding some of this data. So the first is really around how to use this as you think about your business, right? So it's great to know that the range of a pediatric nurse is currently running 80,000 to 125,000. It's even great to know that in your area, that's what it's running at. But how as a company are you supposed to use that? How should you use this data? Because what you can't do is walk into your boss and go, we're wrong, they're right, right? So how should we be thinking about the data in context of our businesses?
Yeah, it's always, number one, a function of, we like to say that our data are the role of our data and public market data in general, not just public insight data, but is context. So we're supplying context, and that context is not meant to supply answers. It's to supply, exactly that context. So if I'm looking at employers for the same position, it's nice to see the entire landscape of those positions, so I know where we stack. And there may be reasons why a particular offer is higher or lower, but it's just supplying that context, that informed opinion.
The second thing we started talking about is how did this?
Sorry.
range component change over time, right? We actually saw a much tighter range at the beginning of salary transparency, and it sort of has grown a little. And I was saying to you something you didn't know, which is that at the beginning, Indeed was very, very heavy-handed in how they were thinking about your salary coming into the Indeed job board, and they have enough of a presence that they were actually able to dictate to companies how far away the min and the max could be from each other, sort of driving that 25% difference for a lot of companies. Now, part of the reason they did this is while we all joke about the Citibank $1 to $1 million range that ended up on all of the social media sites, that wasn't a one-off instance. Lots of companies actually tried to do that. And they tried to put it out on job boards, and the job boards thought to themselves, guys, this is not real. This is not the point. And so they actually became the policing function for a lot of these organizations. So when you look at the data, one of the things that you don't get the advantage of is seeing what the outside forces are that are contributing to this. But this is something that's interesting, right? We're seeing Indeed has relaxed those rules. And so we're starting to see the range spread a little bit. Would you agree with that in terms of what you're seeing from an output?
Yeah, in fact, just in the last 6-9 months, the range has popped up. I probably everybody on this call already knows this, but me. But in fact, I learned some stuff from Leah yesterday that I didn't know. That when Indeed was originally imputing salaries, it was always at 23%. The exactly 23% was the range percent of midpoint. The numbers varied from between 18 and 23. Now we're seeing them 24, 25%. So a little bit of, and this is again composite across everything. We are seeing that. I don't know if the term relaxed might be, because I don't know as a recruiter whether you're not getting a big pop up that says, oh, this is bad, don't do this. And now you can put a 80% range variation. I don't know, but as a composite, those numbers are going up in the last, like I said, 6 to 12 months.
The point being that the more that percentage goes up, the less relevancy salary transparency actually has.
Yes.
Right.
I think
this is
so.
A way of people getting around the requirement of the law, which is to give you a real indication of what your salary level would be with this role with this company, right? And this is a way of companies obfuscating what reality is.
Yeah. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us on to the next. I show up back on stage just to keep people on track and
Rushing them along,
and then I disappear again. Okay, so in my infinite wisdom, I reset the slide deck. Okay, estimated fill days and rates. This is particularly interesting to me because Leah and I were preparing a slide for an analyst presentation not too long ago and saw some interesting stuff about time to fill, and then also cost per hire, which I think we'll piggyback a little bit off of what you're about to go through, Dan. But why don't you give us some insight, some public insight into what we have here, like that?
Yeah. So just a disclaimer. So what we call fill days and fill rates is, I like to use the term an assumptive. So because we're dealing with the postings, what we base our fill days on is the expiration date. So if we see that, and we constantly monitor millions and millions of job postings every month. So we actually look at that and say, okay, this one's expired on this date. Now, when you look at any individual posting, you certainly don't want to extrapolate and say they put the butt in the seat at that point in time. We don't know that. But when you look at this over millions and millions of postings, it's actually very accurate. And so again, kind of extracting the lens, what I like to do is look at the fill days superimposed over the fill rates. So this is looking at the fill days is the line, the solid line. If it's going up, it's in red. If it's going down, it's in green, but it's starting at, I think this one's 12 months. And then where I like to look at is where does the fill rate, which is the percentage of ads that we've estimated have been filled, or again, assumptively filled, and where does that cross? Where do those two lines cross? And right now that number is somewhere in that 49-day range, and that's what we've seen now. And that number has actually come down a little bit. So it's actually improved in recent months. We haven't. We just finished our April jobs report, and the number had come down, I think, from 49.5 to 49.4 or something like that. It hadn't come down a huge amount. So we are seeing that the trend is that the job fill is getting a little bit easier. Now, again, you can pull back the slide, so you can go to the next slide. So again, looking at this across industry, ranging from accommodation services, retail. Again, what we've seen with tech is an improvement. So this is just illustrative. We're not going to go through these sectors, but let's go to the next slide. So now, how do we impute this to be actionable? So what we do in our Talent View platform is we overlay a particular employer against what the rest of the market is. So here again, looking at nurses, if I click on Sanford Health, I could see how it aligns against the rest of the market. So in their case, the fill days by fill date 78.6 compared to the benchmark, which is the rest of the market, at 50.2. Again, there may be explanations for that. You could see that the pay is less than the benchmark. Their reposting rates are double what the benchmark is. So this is, again, looking at, context. There may be reasons for it, but this is a way of actually looking at it in context to the rest of the market so that you can react accordingly.
It's interesting. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, it's all good. Justin, can you leave it up just because it's going to help with context of asking the question? With respect to the fill rate, how do you know that it was filled versus in that example that you're giving on the benchmarking data where you have this reposting rate? Like, how are you assessing whether or not it was filled versus just taken down?
We don't. That's why I said we call it an assumptive fill. So remember, we're dealing with millions and millions of transactions. So it's the law of large numbers that, large numbers, you look at ad expirations as a very good proxy for the fill days. When we've lined it up historically. Go ahead.
Fill days is just how long it takes for the job posting to come down. And we make the jump, the logic, we make the conclusion, or whatever you want to call it, is that represents a fill most of the time.
Yes.
Enough of the time that it's worth.
Now, one thing that we do is we look at the parent, we call the parent posting date. So remember, we've got a reposting rate here. So that's a repeated ad. And in this case, 81.3% of the ads were repeated. So what we do is we don't just trace to the most recent posting, but we trace to the parent or the lineage posting. And that's how we get the fill days. So if an ad's been posted going back 4 times and its parent was 7 months old, that's what we're using as the parent date to calculate that fill days.
Interesting.
So it's interesting here, right? Because one of the slices that I would say is important about this kind of data, if you're looking at yourself against a benchmark organization, is first, in this context, find a company using the same applicant tracking system. I'll give you an example. On your list here is a company called Ascension. I happen to know they use iCIMS. I also know that iCIMS lets you do multiple hires against a single posting. So their posting dates could be longer, for example, because they're going to do 6 hires on one job versus 1 hire. So
right.
All of that's fine, but this is about context, right? As you're looking at your business and you're saying, how am I comparing against the benchmark? Yes, the law of big numbers is a good one, but if you want to get a little bit more micro, find organizations that have some similarities to you in terms of your technology, because the technology is actually going to impact some of these numbers, not in real life, but in terms of that benchmarking data, it will actually matter. As a side note, it's funny, our friends at SHRM reported that in 2024, the average days to hire was 48, which goes right along with your data.
All right.
Like
I
that.
didn't script that.
And 10
if
years
you
ago,
said something different, that would have been really bad for me, right?
No, it was perfect. But 10 years ago, I wonder if everybody knows what the data, what the number was. Any guesses based on my smile and grin? What that data might look like? Anybody? No, nobody's brave today. 44 days. In 10 years, we have gotten worse by 4 days. All the technology in the world has not made it better.
And then there's similar data on cost to hire as well.
Yes, it's just as sad.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. You guys will have to forgive me for my like constant moving around of the windows here. I have a lot of fun with this. All right. Next up, we have active resumes. Dan, this was an interesting one as well. Walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yes. So we track two types of supply side indicators. One is the number of published resume, and I like to use the term resume abstracts. So what we do is look at the number of profiles that are published on Indeed, and we also and we look at that over time. So what we're calling here a new resume eliminates any repeated resumes. So if I publish my resume 14 times during this, in this case, 9-month period, I'm only going to be counted once in these bars. So this is the number of new resumes that have been published. Now you'll notice here, after our, holiday boom during, which is the middle set of bars, that the number really is, March was up to 2.8, but that number has dropped 30 to 37%, essentially from March to April. And when you actually overlay this with the BLS quit rates, we have a pretty passive market right now in terms of candidates. I'm interested to see what you guys and what the audience says. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see that it's across pretty much every industry sector. Everything's dropped off a cliff. That most of these, we're not seeing a very active job seeker universe right now. They're kind of passive, sitting on the sidelines.
I think this is an important data point too, because I'm seeing companies conflate a softer candidate market with better retention activities. Like, we've done a better job with our retention activities, and that might be true. I'm not saying that isn't true, but be careful that you don't rest on your laurels on that statement if your retention rate is up right now, because it may in fact have very little to do with your retention efforts and a lot more to do with the market conditions.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to the next slide, this is the BLS quit rate. So this is not a Public Insight indicator. So this is the actual rate going back to 2021. So this is a post-pandemic slide, and you could see that everybody said quitting. We might now, by the way, be in quiet quitting, which seems to be the term of the term du jour. But we see that we maxed out at 3%, and we bottomed out at 1.9. Now we're at 2.1. So what I showed you in terms of active resumes is kind of in line with, again, people are still kind of. I don't know also whether with all the administration changes, whether people are just saying I need to take a wait and see, because I don't know what the market's going to do. Again, we can all speculate as to what that is, but it's clear that the number of resumes on the street, at least people that are active posting their resumes, has dropped pretty considerably.
I'm sorry, Justin, can you pull that big slide back up?
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to read this. Dan, do you know when did we hit the end of the red where it went flat. Do you know what approximately month we're talking about at that point?
Yeah, actually, sorry, because these are months, and I took the legends off and just so
Yeah.
you'd be.
It looks like we're well over a year ago
Oh
before
yeah,
when
yeah.
this.
It's
So I think the argument on the administration might.
2023.
Yeah, the argument on the administration change is probably invalidated by the data, right?
No,
Like,
I'm talking about on the resume side. If you look at the resumes, that's more of a near term phenomena. You go back.
Okay.
So that's just this year.
Fair enough.
So if you think of if you lay the BLS data as a long term metric and the resumes as more of a short term metric, they shouldn't be completely at odds with each other, but they should be kind of consistent. If I see that quit rates are through the roof, but resumes are low or declining, like you see here, then something's not adding up.
Do you think this data changes as the proliferation of people being able to sort of make any resume for any job with a few keystrokes and a lazy prompt changing?
Yeah, AI.
I think you guys would be better equipped to answer that one than me.
Candidates are reporting an increased usage of AI. The recruiting teams are reporting increased use of AI on their resumes anyway, I'm sure everybody on the call has read 30 resumes and 26 of them look kind of similar to the degree that they shouldn't have. Like something's going on here. So we are certainly seeing the proliferation of AI into the resumes, but I think that there's other reasons why you would make your resume available, right? And I think AI is a step in that process, not the decision, not a decision maker for you. So I would say, Dan, like when you look at this data, what's it saying? Well, people who are unemployed will put their resume out, or people who are willing for their employer to see them out on the market will put their resume up. That might be a better indicator of how quiet the market really is. The fact that we're seeing those numbers drop, right? That the people's unwillingness to be public about it.
Yeah. And speaking of,
you're anonymous in that, if I put out on LinkedIn, looking for work and I'm still employed, then that's a public signal. These are anonymous, so I don't think those are as you might be able to guess what those are, but
yeah, I think that the general adage has always been, even if they're anonymous, they're not, right? Like your title, your company's still on it.
Yeah,
probably still obvious.
Point.
Yeah, if you put open to work and you're still at work at LinkedIn, then you have a new urgency for working for finding new work, I think.
Right.
So sort of moving on, the supply and demand piece, kind of looking at how this all fits together. Dan, I'll hand it over to you here to help us unpack some of this.
Some of you may have seen we co-branded an indicator with TA Tech called the Talent Market Barometer, and this used to be the slide that TA Tech Peter Weddle would put out there. So let me explain this slide. It's one of this graphic. So what we do is we take the number of feet on the street. These are active resumes, so that same metric that you were looking at, and we overlay it against net positions. So to Leah's point earlier, we don't use postings, we use positions. So we take where there's a hiring indicator and we extrapolate out the number of postings to positions, and we eliminate repostings. So that's what we call net positions. So we then overlay those on top of each other. So then what you see a green means there's more candidates for that market than there are positions. And then a red indicates a shortage of candidates for that segment, for that industry segment, against the number of positions. So healthcare is always a sea of red. So we see that when you see the distance between the black and the red, that means it's getting worse. If it shortens up to where there's more red and less black, then that tells you that it's not a problem that's getting better. Likewise, if you see that you see something go from green to red, it means that you're seeing less people, less candidates out, at least publishing that they're in market. And if it flips the other way from red to green, then you know that there's more candidates in market. So this is an interesting metric. And we actually then grade each sector to say, okay, is it slight oversupply, slight over demand? Is it what we call parity, where it's kind of matching up? So we actually look at this every month and then kind of look at it over time. So again, we see that the trends have been to, and this is in line with the resumes, that the demand is now, outstripping supply, at least based on people that are signaling that they are looking.
Dan, can you speak to just a couple of numbers as an example? Let's pick on healthcare. Let's pick on the total. There's a number which is plus 1.9 million and then 3.7 million.
Yeah.
So what are those numbers? Yeah.
So the plus 1.9 means there's 1.9 million more net positions than there are active resumes or new resumes in that segment over the last 9 months, because that's a total. And then it's the composition of all those other numbers to the left of it.
And the 3.7 is what?
That's the total number of net positions.
So 3.7 million.
1.8 million resumes to 3.7 million.
Job openings.
We call it net positions, but yeah, job openings, you could call it that.
Yeah, not total in the market, just the actual openings themselves. The competition. So this is analysis of the competition.
You have 12 sectors, and 10 of the 12 sectors represent more demand for workers than supply,
based on candidates publishing that they're looking.
Right.
So you just have to factor that
in market supply of candidates would be people posting resumes.
Right.
And the one category that has the greatest oversupply of candidates appears to be
I see the title is blocking. So retail and accommodation services, the classic first job out of school.
Okay, retail. Got it.
Yeah. So retail and accommodation.
I was looking for the one I thought professional services was underneath of the one on the right, but yeah, whatever the one is that's underneath of outstripping supply.
Yeah, that's accommodation services. So
okay.
Now during COVID, that number was gigantically red, amazingly red. Probably the only time in our history where, I go to get a hamburger and the person behind the counter says, I'm the only one back here, and I'm in control. I had somebody at Wendy's tell me this. I'm in control, and I'm going to be a while. Which is why I don't go through Wendy's anymore.
We love transparency. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like looking at the healthcare one, for example, right? The U.S. unemployment rate, I think, is sitting around 4.2% right now, if my memory serves. But nurse unemployment has been pretty steadily at around 2%, 2.4%, 2.5%, right? So we haven't seen the healthcare unemployment rate even come close to the actual unemployment rate, as far as I can remember at this point in time. This has been in a shortage forever and a day. When you get into like LPNs, it's even worse. I think it's sub 2%. So we are in a extraordinary shortage, which the data is, you love when data validates what you already know. And this is a great example where you're not just competing in healthcare for nurses, which is, I think, what everybody is drawn to. You're really competing in healthcare across the board for the humans, where this retail one is so interesting to me. I like, in my mind, I wish we had another 12 months of data before it. I know you do. We don't, but you do. How much has the rise in AI, the elimination of entry-level entry-level positions in professional settings, or just the minimizing of the entry-level positions just because of the current budget constraints of a lot of organizations shifted graduating students coming out of various schools and colleges back into a retail position. I'm just curious. I actually don't know the answer. It's just more of a question, and I don't know if you know the answer, but it was the thing that I noted is that retail has been fairly competitive for a long time to find people, and these green data points would indicate that it hasn't been that hard for a little while.
Yeah, except for the very last month, April.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, the use of AI is more of a long term. This is very short term. Although it was kind of interesting with tech. So if I were to run that clock back to 2024, that was green. I don't think I'd ever seen it green. So we had more people in market looking than there were positions to fill. That has now flipped, and we saw that with the comp numbers too, right? The comp numbers had been back. I don't think we're close to the bubble. 200,000 unless you're AI. 200,000 bonus and a free BMW if you
can spell AI. That job. I'm available for that job. I'm going to be great.
Yeah,
Justin, I'm looking at our clock here, just so.
Yeah, I'll say it's my disembodied voice.
One thing, just before you jump off of this, just one thing to note on the retail, which is interesting, is if you look at the demand based on jobs, the 3 months, August, September, October, consistently 170,000. By the time you get to December, it's down 45% or so, 40%. But the demand or the supply of people goes up. So it's interesting to see this dislocation between when people go looking for work in retail tied to the holiday season versus when the employers are actually looking for those people. Maybe there's something for people who want to get a job in retail in the future. There's something to suss out from that. You got to look earlier.
Yeah, the black bar has gone up, even up from the holidays, which is kind of interesting. But the number of obviously people not looking for holiday work, in April, but that number dropped pretty significantly in April. But again, a lot of these numbers dropped in April. Be interested again to see what May looks like.
Yeah, we just got to be better consumers and make Easter a shopping holiday. So let's talk about employer reputation. We need to
we need to speed it up a little bit.
We need to speed it up a little bit here. This tells me Net Promoter Score dropped precipitously. And why is that? What's going on here?
So again, let's define Net Promoter Scores. So what we do in our Talent View platform is we take every single Glassdoor and Indeed review, and we run it through sentiment scoring, and we grade that sentiment scoring. So if just as a reminder, what Net Promoter Score is, I like to call it the raving fans metric. Just like you'll see Net Promoter Score as on a product level. So the raving fans are ones that have a positive sentiment, and it's the percentage of raving fans or promoters over detractors, which people that hate your guts, right? And the neutrals don't count for anything. That's what Net Promoter Score is. So you're taking percent positive over negative. So when you see a number that's, let's say, a product Net Promoter Score, a typical score and product Net Promoter Score is going to be about a 40. So that means there's 40% more raving fans than there are people that don't like you. On the employment side, generally the numbers historically, going back to when we first tracked it, have been in the mid-20s pre-pandemic, and now immediately you've seen that it dropped off of a cliff. So this is not based on anything you're seeing in Glassdoor. It's based on what we're seeing in the sentiment as we read the reviews. So people, are not happy, and it actually thought that it had bottomed out and it come back up. You see, can you make that a little bit bigger again, Justin? So you could see that in around 17.4, that's when I thought it bottomed up, because then we had this little victory lap where it went up to 18.2, and I thought, oh, it's going to come back up, and then it went back down again, and then it came back up. It was like a roller coaster. So now it's up to 18.2. That means there's still a lot of work to do. Now, if go to the next slide. This is, so if you've ever looked at a Glassdoor rating, this is the positive business outlook question. And I wanted to look at this, since we had a new administration, because people are concerned about the economy. And you could see that's trending in 2025. It just kept going down and down. And now it's come back up a little bit in April. But that's answering that question. Do I have a positive business outlook for my business? And it's answered, no, I don't. And so 60% of people have a positive business outlook. And that's down, it may seem like that's not a whole lot, but 5% drop here is huge from top to bottom. So, people do not have a rosy business outlook. So, again, that's more of a macro level. If we go to the next slide, it's what's actionable is what are people saying. And if you could make that full page. So what we do is we then do opinion mining on every review, and we then look at, okay, what are the black lines are the number of reviews, but then the line graph is the percent that are positive. So if it says 82%, 82% is a positive of subjects that people rate negatively, such as schedule, communication, management, and again, things that are eminently fixable, but there may also be things that you could do that promote your brand a little better. And so I find that these use of words and how they are promoted or how they are mentioned in a review can be very actionable, especially against your competitors like we have here.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's interesting about this kind of data is, again, it's in context, like we were talking about. So if you think about the business, you're looking at yours and you're like, ooh, we're dipping a little bit. So is everyone else. So there is an overall sentiment that's gone negative. So the question isn't, are you dipping or not, and hit the panic button, but where are we in context of the rest of the market? Are we dipping worse? Are we dipping actually not as bad? Are we in a better place than our peers? So really this context piece matters, because I think if you look at your data in isolation, it's easy to have that moment of panic when it may have less to do with your business and more to do with the general sentiment of the market and of employees overall, not just yours.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing to that. We ran our candidate preference study earlier this year where we surveyed in-market job candidates. And one of the things I stood out to me that I thought was interesting is the younger generations, Z specifically, far more in tune to like the frustrations of being ghosted for a job interview, poor application experiences, all those sort of things. So like when you think about, Leah, to just expand on your point, and I think this is good for everyone to kind of think about, when you think of your job market and your candidate flow, your applicants that are in market for your jobs, there will be pieces of that audience and of that market that has data that may be skewing the whole number, right? So if you're hiring a lot of Gen Z folks and you've got a shitty process or a leaky bucket somewhere, that is going to incur more wrath down the road, right?
Or if you just introduced your new hybrid policy and it wasn't before,
exactly,
you might see some changes there on your Glassdoor rating.
Malicious compliance on RTO. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left.
Why don't we consolidate the last two, because I can kind of consolidate them, and then we can
wait.
Yeah, and then we can.
Does that seem like
that sounds amazing? Let's go. Let's leave about 5 minutes for folks if there's any audience questions.
All right, so I'm going to fly through these last two. So we do a concept where we don't just look at skills, but we lump everything under the broad category of attributes. So I probably get asked every week, can you find me where AI, what jobs are AI? And my point is AI is everywhere. So what you're looking at here is a ribbon chart of the top, I think it's top 20 jobs that have an AI introduced attribute. And we were kicking this around yesterday. I think writer was at the top. So something that was a writer. So you'll see, product manager, program manager. So, you can't. I've had people look and say, "Oh, a machine learning engineer, I would expect that to be a lot more." Well, yeah, because AI is everywhere, and it's going to be infused at an attribute level. It's not going to be infused at a job title level. So go to the next one, Justin. Is you'll see that the words that are used in where AI is used in the attributes is also kind of going all over the place. And so again, I think the point here is that we want to look at AI holistically. We don't want to look at it as AI is a job. AI is really infused everywhere and continues to grow. The other point with attributes is a little bit different approach. If you go to the next one, so I call this the bonus. It's attribute pools. So what we found is that as we try to get in front of more candidates, there may be ways that we can use this encourage to apply indicator. So here what you're looking at is the leading roles for fair chance jobs. So fair chance is individuals with a criminal record of some kind. It doesn't mean necessarily they were incarcerated. And what I found interesting is the number one position for fair chance jobs is a front-end developer. I'm used to seeing fair chance jobs be warehouse associate, be some blue collar worker, but we're seeing a lot more of, hey, I'm going to put this in front of untapped pools. And here we see front-end developer kind of surfacing to the top. So the nice thing about a ribbon chart is it shows you rankings. So here we're seeing the ranking of that in front-end developer is kind of surfaced to the top. So it's just using the point of these two metrics is to understand and use attributes as a way of kind of looking at kind of the underneath the surface of things. And AI and untapped pools are two ways of doing that. So I was able to kind of jam those last two in together.
For me, that was interesting about this particular one was that front-end developer, which led to us chatting for a while about these 2-month boot camps on go from zero to technical and tapping into career changers and transitioners through these coding boot camps. I've hired a handful of people out of these over the years. School teacher become developer, a geologist who became a developer. I guess there weren't a lot of geology roles available, but it's an interesting role for people who can work from home. They don't want to do a lot of human interaction. You can acquire the skills relatively quickly. What I thought was interesting, Dan, was when I was looking at this list were the ones that you can't develop the skills quickly, like an RN. That was more interesting to me. Like an RN is not something you can 6 weeks and become an RN. That's something you actually have to invest significant time, resources, and education into. So some of these I thought were really interesting. Not the front end developer. Actually,
CDL was another one you said.
Yeah, I mean, as CDL, a lot of them will offer training, which is good, but it's not quick to become a CDL driver. You do have to work for it. You have to be licensed. There's a medical exam you have to go through. It's not a small amount of work to become a CDL. So I just thought some of those were kind of interesting how that's worked out in the data.
Well, we are getting to just a few minutes left in the hour. Dan, I really appreciate you coming on and helping steer the conversation, provide some insight into things. For the audience, I will definitely be sending out a recording. as well as a copy of the deck, as well as a copy of our candidate preference report, which has got some great survey data we collected at the beginning of the year. Does anybody have any questions for the panel or any data that they've seen that they'd like to share, etc.? And we'll be happy to get to that in the last few minutes here.
While we're waiting, one of the things that I think is fascinating about this data is that it is extracted from so much of the US publicly available data. And so there is something very stable about it, even when it's moving, right? You very rarely see these large shifts in the data, right? So you have this sort of nice stability. And again, as you're thinking about your business and your business over time, I think companies are more likely to see a rapid shift in their information. And so you're looking at all of this is about how do you take your own world and put it against what's happening on the macro side of things. So if you're looking at your data and you see a massive shift, the market's unlikely to be doing the same thing, right? So you can look at the market data, say, all right, it was trending down, but not this much, not this way, or actually it's trending a different direction entirely. So what's going on in our world? So I do think having that public data as a more of a slow moving machine against your own business data, which is more likely to be volatile, is a really good way for you to look at your data in context of the larger market. I don't know, Justin or Alex, if you have any parting thoughts on this.
No, other than I think one of the just from our point of view, we see a lot of application data come through Jobsync, and we'll be sharing some really interesting stuff publicly here in the coming months, which I'm very excited about. Little sneak preview there. But overall, I think the key takeaway for me is exactly what we started the conversation with, which is whenever we're thinking about benchmarks, I don't know why I'm holding my portable SSD here, but whenever we're thinking about benchmarks, let's contextualize to our business and our talent market and help understand kind of how we fit in that versus just sort of thinking about things without that lens. So this has been really great. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope everyone has a marvelous last couple days of May here. And we will see everybody next month. And thanks again to Dan and the Public Insight team for joining
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dan.
And for everybody still here, next month, June 25th, 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have two of my favorite people, Ben Bear and Jeremy Lyons, join us to talk about AI's impact on recruiting operations. Because if you put AI in it, everybody has to be excited about it. But in all seriousness, how do the recruiting ops and talent ops teams start to really think about AI in the business and where it should and shouldn't touch the recruiting teams and how it should be monitored? So look for that in the next couple of days and look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.